It's time for the second half of our Sunday Sounds miniseries, where writer and musician Damon Krukowski helps us examine the implications of the changing ways that we listen to media in a digital world. He hosted the Ways of Hearing podcast, and now you can pick up the book Ways of Hearing from the MIT Press. This week, Damon and I talk not about what you're hearing, but how audio is stored. I'll kick off this exchange with a pretty outrageous story from the world of physical media. I remember my first professional radio job was at a classical music station, 98.7 WFMT, and we had a lot of old reels sitting around, and they wanted to digitize them, they wanted to preserve them. And I remember very distinctly, they would ask me, hey, go in the back and put this reel in a microwave oven and bake it. To make the reel playable. Can you talk about that? Because you mentioned it in the podcast.
I forgot that came up in the podcast. Yeah, it was particularly, there was one generation of tape that was particularly susceptible to this. The problem was that the surface that the tape is coated with, the metallic magnetic surface, was separating from the plastic base. And this was particularly a problem in a certain era of tape manufacture. So those might not have even been the oldest tapes there, but there was definitely a couple decades when it was worse than the rest of the time on tape. Anyway, what you were doing was temporarily fusing the coating back to the plastic for one play. I don't know if you were aware of this, but then you only get one shot to play it. And sometimes as you play that, after it's been baked, the surface completely splits off the base as it's going through the machine. So you get it like through the playhead and it's just destroyed on the other end of the reel. It can be that extreme.
I couldn't remember the exact temperature or time this took, but to give you a rough idea of what this involved, one article on NPR's website says they bake their tapes at 125 degrees Fahrenheit or 51 degrees Celsius for about 8 hours. I found other articles mentioning slightly higher temperatures from 130 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit for as little as 4 hours, and a lot of it depends on the humidity, the type of oven, and other factors. Anyway, here's Damon on the implications.
Analog media is fragile, physically fragile, of course, in one particular way. But again, this is a really interesting conversation to have, which is that digital media are also incredibly fragile, right? We've all lost digital information. And it happens when your computer crashes or your phone falls in the toilet or, there's like a million ways that we lose our digital information. You make a backup and the backup fails. You forget to make a backup and something happens.
Or MySpace migrating data. They lost years and years of songs.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I just read an article just recently about the MySpace thing for Pitchfork. That was 53 million songs lost. And this is an irony of the digital environment, which is the classical music station was asking you to bake the tapes and make these transfers in an effort at archiving, right? So they wanted to digitize it, thinking this will safeguard this fragile physical material, this tape made of plastic and metal, and now we'll have a safe digital copy. But of course, how do you make a safe digital copy? What is that? What format is it in? Will these digital formats be readable even a few years from now? I've already lived through so many computer standards for programs and languages that I have files that I can't open anymore. I can't open my email from much of the 90s. I can't open some of my own writing that I did in a word processing program that wasn't Word. Even some of my Word files I can't open because Word stopped making them compatible with current operating systems. And so digital media is extraordinarily fragile in different ways. And that's one of those things where you can't just think, oh, right, now we're in the digital environment. We no longer have this old ancient problem of how to deal with a physical material. We have this new problem. So sure, magnetic tape was a limited lifespan, but so does digital information, and it may be even more fragile, really.
Right, and CDs have the same problem, right? Those only last a certain number. If they get scratched, you can't play them. I'm not sure how durable vinyl is. Doesn't that have a certain amount of plays as well? Well,
the sound degrades. This is the thing about analog information. It degrades, but doesn't disappear. You can always get some sound off it. And, they sent an LP out into space on the Voyager to go out beyond the solar system. And the idea was not that alien species would have turntables, but that they would have no problem decoding an LP.
Right.
And really, I think that was a better bet than sending them a Microsoft Word file, because God knows, we have enough trouble opening those.
Yeah, who knows what version they have.
Exactly.
Damon told us that he hasn't particularly seen any renewed efforts to figure out the best way to archive audio, but we've got some good news if you're still hanging on to those music CDs you picked up starting in the early 1980s.
CDs, ironically, although they are digital information, but they're on a physical format that has its problems, but they're pretty solid. And we've had remasters made of our own music, not that old, where the mastering engineer said, never mind the tape, give me the CD that we made, because the CD is a more reliable copy than the master tape. A commercial CD I'm talking about. He says, send me a sealed commercial copy if you still have one, meaning in the shrink wrap, and I'll master it from that.
Wow.
And we have done reissues based on that as the best available original, so to speak. The original that is actually the same copy that you can find in the thrift store. And broadcasting that information was really not in the interest of the record companies. And of course, Napster figured it out, right? And every pirate in the world figured it out. When you duplicate a CD, you are duplicating the master. And don't let anybody tell you anything different.